You're watching Man Coverage with Nate Schmidt and James Bonneville on National Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everyone. This is Man Coverage with Knoxville Nate and James P. Bonneville. We are in college football week 1. We are coming to you live on the Bet Us Sports Network, also under the National Streaming Sports umbrella, talking about college football week 1. Lots of overreactions going on around the country, to say the least. We're not going to spit that shit on this show. We're going to talk about the games. We're going to explain what you saw in week 1, and then we're going to move on. We're not going to tell you, oh, Miami's going to win the national championship because they played halfway decent in one effing game. So don't expect that here on this show. Also, forget the dude's name from ESPN, whose only explanation about the Buckeyes game yesterday was how much money they spent in the offseason. I want to give him a little bit of a heads up that David, what's his name? David Hale. David, there's more teams out there than the Buckeyes that spent money on players. In fact, it's legal to spend money on players now, and your $20 million bullshit is getting really old. James, how are you doing today, bud?
I'm tired. Man, I watched so many football games yesterday. It was crazy. But, yeah, you kind of had a feeling the overreaction, like you usually do in week 0 and week 1 and even week 2. Everybody has this massive overreaction based on what they see. And, I mean, we've seen this before. Sometimes teams lay out flat and turn around at the end of the year. I mean, 2014 Ohio State. I mean, played like crap against Navy, then lost to Virginia Tech at home, and then went on a run that got them a ring. So I think people got to settle the hell down a little bit before we get into it. But let's get rolling. Do the recap, baby.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is, but there's just no reason to act like, you know who's going to win the national championship after one game. I mean, we got some glimpses of what's going on, and we'll talk about that. But to sit here and tell me that, the Canes are back because they won one game, I kind of feel like it's more of an indictment on the Gators than I do the Canes. But we'll talk about that game in depth here in a moment. I want to kick it off with probably the best game of the weekend, or was it really? I guess some people are calling it the best game of the weekend. Whether or not it was, we'll leave that up to you guys. But it kind of felt like deja vu to me. We're watching a decent team come into Allen Field. There's 100,000 screaming weirdos in their what are they called? Milkman outfits or whatever the hell it is. And, the defense looks good. The offensive line looks pretty good. The skill players look good. And the quarterback is garbage. Nothing's changed. We got a new coach in here. We've spent $80 million to get rid of Jimbo and get him to go away. They hire a new coach and are paying him even more millions of dollars. And it looks exactly the same to me. James, what did you think about the 23-13 Notre Dame victory on A&M? Now, this game was way closer than that score indicates.
Yeah.
As Notre Dame scored 10 points late to kind of pull ahead and win. And kudos to Marcus Freeman and the boys. They were a physical team all night long, and they deserved to win. But to me, it was more about the ineptitude of your boy Wigman there than it was anything else.
Honestly, I think the biggest red flag for me there were red flags on both teams, to tell you the truth. Texas A&M lost a lot in the transfer portal on receiver, and it showed. I mean, it's not like Notre Dame's D-backs are experienced, but I wouldn't say they're fantastic by any stretch of the imagination. They made them look fantastic yesterday. I mean, there were so many times the corners were beating the receivers to the route. Like, it wasn't even funny. I mean, Wagman goes 12 for 30 with 2 interceptions for 100 yards. I mean, you got a QBR of 31.8. I mean, if it wasn't for Le'Veon Moss, I question if A&M or even their defense would have even put up a point. I really, really question A&M. I mean, I think this is going to be a rough year. They have a lot of work to do on. Not having Muhammad and Stewart as in the receiving core is showing, and it ain't going to be fun. Now, Notre Dame, if Riley Leonard could produce a pass longer than 15 yards in the air, not like, getting a 1 yard run that runs for big, Notre Dame would have been really put the wood to A&M. But
but they couldn't. They couldn't. He couldn't throw the ball down the field at all. Even now, and I know the coverage was decent, but there were times where guys were wide open, and he couldn't get it to them. And it was the same thing with A&M. And I'm not saying that the receivers on A&M are the best in the league. I agree with you. Losing Stewart and company is going to affect them, and it was evident yesterday. But I saw guys open. He just couldn't throw the ball to them. He couldn't hit them no matter what. And last week, when we were talking about Notre Dame, you mentioned their schedule and that it was difficult. And I went and looked at it. I don't think it really is. I think their schedule looks pretty easy. This was, in my opinion, the toughest game for the Irish all year long, based upon what we've seen from some of their teams. Now, things can obviously change, but I feel like Notre Dame's got a pretty clear path here after winning this one, and they're feeling pretty good about themselves after getting it done. What games on their remaining schedule scare you, James?
Well, SC, Florida State, because I think Florida State's better than what they showed last week, and we'll see tonight when they play against Boston College. They better show up, otherwise this is going to be really interesting. If Georgia Tech plays the defense they do, I mean, that could be interesting. We know Louisville can show up.
They've only got 2 away games. They only play at Purdue and at USC. I mean, that's their only away games. So
true. Everything else is neutral site. No,
neutral site or home. I mean, that's a pretty good setup. I mean, the fact that they survived yesterday is going to help them tremendously down the stretch because they don't really play a true road game the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, their next true road game would be at Purdue in 2 weeks, which is never easy to play at because Purdue's so freaking quiet. I mean, that's just a weird game for Purdue. I mean, for anybody when you play against Purdue, it's just like it's so quiet there.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
But they still got holes, though. I mean, they really do. I mean, it's not like this is a lights out team. I mean, Jeremiah Love looked a lot better than I expected. He's gotten a lot stronger, and the speed is still legit. But they don't have that estimate guy. And if they expect Riley Leonard to be that guy all year long, he's going to get hurt. I mean, people forget Leonard only had a 23% completion percentage on passes longer than 15 yards last year. Or heck, at Duke, period.
Well, I felt
that means they're not a vertical team.
No, and I felt like yesterday, the on the big plays on third downs when they had to pick up the first or game on the game on the line type of plays, it was more him running the football behind that Notre Dame offensive line than it was him throwing it. I mean, he made bigger plays with his legs, and he got it done running the football. But let me tell you, he took some shots, and if he thinks he's going to run the football that many times, against teams like that all year long. I mean, not like I said, not that I'm really scared by their schedule, but he's not going to survive running the ball that many times. I mean, he had 12 carries, 12 running plays where he carried the football, and there was other plays where he was scrambling and took hits, or when he dropped back to throw the ball and get hit. We don't really know what they have depth wise behind Riley Leonard, and I think using him as their number 2 or number 1B running back, I think could be problematic for them going forward. You agree with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially in this day and age with the transfer portal. I mean, you're going to be lucky to get a good second stringer. If your starter gets hurt, you could be in a world of hurt right now. I mean, their backup right now is Steve Angeli. And then you've got Lloyd Carr's grandson at number 3, who's a true freshman. I mean, if you know who this kid is out of Bergen Catholic, I mean, he sounds familiar, but I don't know much about him.
I do not. And that's my concern, is they're kind of putting all their eggs in Riley Leonard's basket. And I'm not really excited about him running the football that much. And he's going to have to be able to throw the ball if they're going to be able to win more games than one. That's for damn sure. So we'll see how that works going forward. But when I mentioned deja vu, it wasn't just because of the one Texas A&M game and the fact that they paid $77 million to get Jimbo out of there and bring Mike Elko in, and it didn't change a damn thing. But also, when I was watching the Georgia-Clemson game, I felt like I was watching the Georgia-Clemson game for like I think they played each other, the last 3 years to start the season?
At least.
And it looked exactly the same. I mean, it's like watching the same game over and over again, except for the fact that Clemson's defense, got tired and got banged up a little bit earlier yesterday. What did you think about this like 5th Clemson Georgia kickoff game that happened yesterday?
Well, Clemson just doesn't have the depth they once did. I mean, plain and simple. Especially along the defensive line, and the receiving core is not nearly as strong as it was what it once was. I mean, the first half they were able to contain the game, and you saw Georgia get a lot of chunk yards off of basically doing drags behind the line of scrimmage and coming out, and the linebackers not getting there quick enough. The second half, they opened it up a lot more, and Georgia's defense was Georgia's defense, and they really shut them down. I mean, if Maffa and Klubnik aren't running the ball, Clemson's in trouble. And that they really showed it yesterday. I mean, granted, you look at the ACC, I mean, it's still early, but honestly, I would still pick Clemson to win the ACC. Wouldn't you?
I am not going to count the Clemson Tigers out yet, just because they lost to Georgia. Did it look like they still need to maybe start using the portal and go get a couple of linemen and get a couple of receivers? Yes, I do. I think that, but I'm not ready to count them out of the ACC title. I think they're just as good as Miami. I think they're just as good as Florida State. So I would agree with you on that statement. Until I see otherwise, I'm gonna hold judgment out on the deal here. But I got to be honest. I've been not a defender, but I've been one to say that Clemson's not going to get rid of Dabo Swinney. But I've got to tell you, if they have another 8-4 season, and it looks like it did yesterday, now that was Georgia, so it's very hard to say that they're going to look like that moving forward. I don't think they will. But if they do not, get in the playoff, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on his ass. Don't you agree?
I agree. I mean, honestly, you look back in their heyday, their receiving core, especially at the slot, and their defensive line were their bellwethers. They had incredible depth. And you look over, literally since Trevor Lawrence left, they haven't had the depth at those two position groups. Who
stuck out to you on their D line yesterday?
Oh, Peter Woods. I thought Peter Woods was really, really good. Like he is by far and away their best defensive lineman, and really it reminds me a lot of Pharrell during their previous grouping. I mean, just I love how he's really good at containing the edge. He's very much a tactician at tackling too. How he attacks the hip, gets down, like he's very good. I really am impressed with him. But
yeah, and he's
there's a drop off after that.
He's a D tackle by trade.
Yeah,
and he's the only one that was in the backfield all day. He had 1 sack. He had 2.5 tackles for loss. Do you know what the rest of the team had?
Yeah,
0.
Yeah,
0 sacks. He was the only one that had a sack, and I think there was 2 other tackles for loss, maybe 2.5 others besides him, or two others besides him. So he was really the only one in the backfield causing any pressure and disrupting anything that Georgia was trying to do. And you remember that, especially that team that went to the national championship game 2 or 3 times there, that all 4 guys were drafted.
5, 6.
I mean, they had all 4 starters.
Yeah.
Were drafted in the NFL, and I'm talking about Bryant and Fair and all, Dexter Lawrence and all those guys. I mean, the whole unit was badass, and their backups were all good. And I just don't see that same type of talent on the D line. I don't see the same talent at wide receiver. They kept talking about that kid Cole Turner being the fastest guy on their team. He had 1 catch for 1 yard. So please stop talking to me about him. And I don't see, I just don't see the T. Higgins. I don't see the Justin Ross. I don't see the Deion Kane. I don't see anybody close to that in their receiver group. And that is disheartening, because once again, they're going to put all the blame on this young quarterback who wasn't great, by the way. But, I'm not sure it's all him. They can't really run the ball. They had 16. Maffa had 16 carries for 59 yards.
Yeah, and they were checking down to him on pass plays like left and right, and Georgia was reading it like a freaking book.
Yeah. He had 2 receptions for -3 yards.
I mean, honestly, you look at Georgia, the thing that impressed me the most was their defensive backs. I think KJ Bolden, the freshman, looked great. Malachi Starks really did a great job in coverage. Linebackers really moved sideline to sideline really well. I mean, for a team, they got speed there with Lovett and Smith, but there's nobody on that receiving core that just like stands out and blows you away.
No, and Georgia's defense, it's all new guys really that we haven't really talked about before, because they reload every year. And, Jalen Walker had, a sack and a half and led the team with 6 tackles. I was pretty impressed with Jalen Walker. Dalen Everett had a pretty good game. I also liked Raylan Wilson. He looked pretty solid. Those were the 3 guys that I wrote down that were really, impressing me. But their secondary looked good as always.
Yeah.
They've got they've got cover guys. They've got speed guys. They have depth in the secondary like they always do. And to me, that's what I really was most impressed with was once again the Georgia defense. They held Clemson to 3 points.
And Carson Beck was Carson Beck. I you look at him. Is he going to blow you away? No, but he doesn't make mistakes. He's so precise in his game that he's going to do the smart play rather than the gamble. And he just keeps getting first downs and putting their offense in bad situations where they have to drive the field. And he's really good at that.
No, I agree. I was interested to see what he looked like in year 2 as the starter, and I was impressed with him, man. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't take negative plays. He's perfect for this team, and he's a lot smarter and a lot more cerebral, I think, than people give him credit for. And I was pretty impressed with him. Let's talk about one more game here before we go to the commercial break here on Man Coverage. Once again, this is Nate Digital and James Bonneville coming to you live on Week 1 National Streaming Sports Network here, brought to you by BetUs.com. We are breaking down the first week of the games. Let's go back a little. Let's get in our time machine with Marty McFly and pop in the DeLorean and go back to Thursday night. Okay. We both thought that this North Dakota State team would give Colorado all they wanted. I told you that I thought they would be there till the end. I thought they would never quit. I thought they would fight. I thought they would be just as physical at the point of attack as Colorado was. I didn't know if they'd be able to win just because this is a first-year head coach. I know he's been at the program 3 different times, and he's spent considerable amount of time at the school. But I just didn't know what North Dakota State would look like this year. They had plenty of opportunities to win this game. And I know Colorado came out on top, and everybody, Deion's going to win the title again. But, I thought this was more an indictment on North Dakota State and how they play football than anything Colorado did. They had a couple of big chunk plays with Travis Hunter, obviously. And without those, I feel like North Dakota State was the more dominant team. What did you see on Thursday night with Colorado in their opener?
Well, I mean, that was the key is North Dakota State really needed to have Colorado have long drives, because if they don't score quickly like they did with Horn and Hunter, they're in trouble. I mean, it was obvious that Colorado had more speed, but you look at the line of scrimmage play, I mean, it would be, you'd be, if you say that Colorado won the line of scrimmage, you're kidding yourself. I mean, they had long sustained drives. I mean, Cam Miller, 18 for 22 for 277 yards and a touchdown. And then on top of that, throwing 81 yards rushing. I mean, and this is not by any stretch of the imagination a world beater North Dakota State team. I mean, they've had much better teams in the process, but this is a game that went to the fourth quarter. And if it wasn't for the speed on the outside with Horn and Sanders, man, I think North Dakota State still wins this game. And there are some very questionable calls that somehow the flag got kept in the pocket by the refs. I mean, one was just a blatant targeting call that Colorado should have got nailed for. But I mean, I honestly thought North Dakota State was going to win this game because I knew they were going to win on line of scrimmage.
I agree, and they almost did. I mean, there was plenty of opportunities for North Dakota State to win. I mean, there really was. It looked to me like this guy was coaching his first game ever as a head coach, which he was. And that's what it looked like to me. No, I'm not talking shit about him. I mean, hell, he went into Boulder and almost beat, Primetime, who's the greatest coach ever. So I'm not giving him a hard time. I'm just saying there were several instances where I was like, what are you doing? Like when his quarterback, you just mentioned, Cam Miller, couldn't be stopped, and he keeps taking him out and putting this secondary quarterback in who, isn't a bad player. But when you have a guy who's in a rhythm, who's marching you down the field, you don't pull him out of the game as your primary ball handler. That to me was kind of confusing. Did you get that at all on some of those drives where he would substitute the quarterback? And
that made no sense to me.
Yeah, okay. I just thought that was just me. There were several times where Cam Miller was completing passes. He was running the football. He was kind of doing the read option, whatever it was, and then they pull him out of the game and put this other guy in who isn't as talented, or else he would be the starter, and took their best player, who was Miller, off the field. Explain that to me, please.
I do not understand it one bit. The only thing that could make me believe is that maybe he was injured on one of the running plays. But quite frankly, the way he was playing, I want to keep him in the game as much as possible. I mean, it kind of shocked me, but honestly, this is the same offense I've seen out of North Dakota State since Craig Bowl was there, but when they made the jump from D2 to 1AA, I mean, they're running the exact same system over and over again. And guess what? It works.
It works. They move the ball relentlessly down the field all night. The only issue they had was in the red zone There was a couple of times where they got inside the 10 and then had stupid penalties or mistakes and got pushed back and then had to settle for field goals. Or at one time it was, 4 downs and out. So I feel like the red zone stuff will get better as the year goes along for North Dakota State. I think they've got a chance to compete in the FCS. And I feel like Colorado looks basically the same as they did last year. And Colorado is about one injury away from being totally screwed. I mean, if they lose Shedeur Sanders or Travis Hunter or both, I feel like their season's over.
Well, I mean, people forget they got Dalen Hunter, Hayden, the transfer from Ohio State, who was the number 3 guy at Ohio State, only went 9 for 20 yards. He's a good running back. That tells you how freaking effed up that offensive line is in Boulder. I mean, you go back to the days when Darian Hagan was there. Man, that offensive line was scary. They were unbelievable across the line for years. And now it's like a shell of itself.
Yeah, I didn't really understand that at all. And it was almost like they, were trying to throw the football to prove, how good his son is at times instead of just running the damn ball. And then Charlie Offerdahl, which God bless him, the walk-on, he's a little scrapper, but if I had the ability to hand the ball to Dallin Hayden over this walk-on guy, I would definitely, put the ball in Hayden's hands. Would you not?
Yeah, easily.
Okay.
Easily.
Okay. Just checking to see if maybe I was crazy there, but that's definitely what I think. But we'll see. They won 4 games last year. Looking at the schedule, I do feel like their schedule is a little bit easier than it was last year, just because the Pac-12 was unreal last season and had one of the best years ever of the conference in their last final hurrah. And I don't know how good the Big 12 is going to be from top to bottom. So I feel like Colorado has a little bit of an ability to maybe improve on that 4-win total. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, it all depends on what they look like against Nebraska next week. I mean, it's just like a week-to-week trial with them. I mean, I think they're going to struggle with K-State. I think they're going to struggle with Central Florida. I think they're going to really struggle with Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State.
Yep.
Other than that, well, you got to go to Arizona, and Arizona's got just as much speed, if not more, than Colorado does. I mean, that's a game where get your track shoes ready, because that's going to be a lot of points scored.
No doubt. Well, we're going to continue to break this down. We'll be right back to discuss the rest of week 1.
National Streaming Sports is brought to you in part by BetUs.com, designed for true fans. NFL odds, week 1 and futures, college football odds, including Heisman Trophy favorites and playoff odds, NBA odds of division winners and playoffs, Major League Baseball playoff and World Series odds, the National Hockey League Conference playoffs and Stanley Cup odds, and boxing wagers. Betting opportunities include versus the spreads and outright winners, also during the game. Use our link on our website, nessp.info. The bet.
We are back. Man coverage, Knoxville Nate and James Bonneville on National Streaming Sports Network. We are here breaking down week 1 in college football. We already went through A&M, Notre Dame. We went through Georgia, Clemson. We talked about Colorado, North Dakota State. Let's go up to the Big 10 and talk a little bit about James Franklin. You can say whatever you want to about James Franklin, but he wins games when he has better talent than the other team. That is when he wins. Yesterday, he had more talent on the Penn State roster, and they beat West Virginia 34-12. James, what did you think about the opener for Penn State? Is this a year that James Franklin beats Ohio State?
I'm not sure I'm ready to go that far yet because we've seen this story before. But I will say I was impressed yesterday with Penn State. I mean, going into Morgantown is never easy. Former rivals before their big, Penn State joined the Big Ten. But it's not easy going into Morgantown. And Penn State put their foot down on the Mountaineers' neck from the jump. I mean, they really played out well. Drew Aller, 11 for 17, 216. He looked like the guy we expected to see last year. He looked like a pro quarterback, in all honesty. He's got that potential. The running game, you got Singleton and Allen. Allen didn't have as good as game, but Singleton really showed out. 13 for 114 and a touchdown, 8.8 yards per carry with a 40-yard long. I mean, just an outstanding game. Now, do they have that, Harrison Wallace III had 117 yards. But it just doesn't seem like they have that game breaker at receiver like they've had in the past with Hamlin and some of those other guys. I mean, that's the one downside, but they really showed out in a game where a lot of people were picking West Virginia to beat Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really buy into that. West Virginia to me has not been, a dominant team since Steve Slayton was there and Pat White, was running the option, with Tavon Austin and all those guys, Stedman Bailey. That team was stacked, and I haven't seen a West Virginia team that's really excited me since then, and I still really don't see it. So I'm not ready yet to give Penn State any huge credentials. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, is week one. It is what it is. It's one game. They did well. They won. Bingo. They went in a hostile environment, got a W. I'll give them credit for that, but I'm not ready to sit them atop the Big Ten after one victory.
You can't go that far that quick. I mean, but quite frankly, they really have a legitimate argument to be that number 3 team in the Big Ten, which a lot of people were picking them going in. I mean, there's a lot more games to be played, but they really showed a lot better today than I was expecting them to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought that Drew Aller looked better than he has at times, so I will give him credit for that. I'm just still on the fence with the Penn State Nittany Lions. We'll see what they look like moving forward, but that was a pretty good win for them. 34-12 on the road. There you go. That's what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Another team that went on the road into what used to be a difficult place to play, and by that I mean the Swamp. Can we even call it the Swamp anymore? I mean, it didn't even look that hot. And Tim Tebow looked like he was about to barf the whole time. I mean, it's pretty sad when Timothy J. Tebow comes out of the locker room and can't even fire the fans up because they know they've got a, dead man walking coach and little, if anything, to excite anyone on this team. I mean, their best player last year was ETN. He plays for Georgia now, and the rest of this Florida team's just kind of meh. Yesterday was bad, man. 41-17, Miami took it to them. Cam Ward looked good, but I think this is more an indictment on the Gators than I do the Canes.
Yeah.
What do you what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is a team that I think Napier's lost the locker room. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when Napier gets fired. I mean, he's right now, if they fired him today, they'd owe him $28 million. I mean, Grant, it's a far cry from A&M still owing till what? Barron Trump becomes president, the amount of money they owe Jimbo. But this is bad. And you got to start looking at who the next head coach is going to be at Florida. And quite frankly, there are 2 names on my list who I would put right off the bat, and that would be Jamie Chadwell sitting up in Liberty or going to Oxford and looking at Lane Kiffin. I mean,
I like both those names. I like both those names.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't see a guy like Lane Kiffin coming there. I mean, you look back, I think a lot of people over accentuate how good Florida has been over the past 50 years. I mean, outside of Spurrier and Urban Meyer, have they been truly dominant? Have they had good years? Yeah. Have they made multiple years where they went New Year's Six? Well, yeah. I mean, McIntyre did it. Mullen did it. But is that them, or is that just the talent pool they have in Florida? I think you bring a guy in like Jamie Chadwell. I think Chadwell could do amazing things. I really do.
No, I agree with you. This is what I said to you the other day. I mean, you take away the Steve Spurrier era and the Urban Meyer era off of the Florida Gator resume, and what do you have really? I mean, you have teams that are, sometimes 10 game winners. One year with Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts, was a pretty solid offense, but they had issues defensively that year. Could put up points, but had issues stopping people. So my point is, the Gators need a big time, game changing type of coach to come in there if they're going to compete in the SEC. I have to agree with it. Everyone says they have the toughest schedule. When I look at it, I agree. I think the Gators have the toughest schedule of any team in the Power Four. Do you agree with that?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. But you look at this roster. I mean, you're not going to win with Graham Mertz. We've already seen the story before up in Wisconsin. Yeah, he's a 5-star quarterback. Yeah, he was an Elite 11 quarterback. How many Elite 11 and 5-star quarterbacks have we seen that have done jack shit in college?
Yeah, he's not good. He is not good. And that's the other thing, is that the talent that they're bringing in, they had what's his name? Rashada.
Yeah, Jaden Rashada.
Yeah, all locked up and then couldn't get him paid. And, I feel like that was a big time blunder because they need a quarterback. They need a difference maker. When Florida has been, a team that has won national championships, it's because they had Timothy J. Tebow at quarterback. It's because they had Danny Werfel at quarterback, guys that could complete the pass and keep the ball moving and make plays when they needed to be made. That's just not who Graham Mertz is. I mean, Graham Mertz wasn't good at Wisconsin. He's not good at Florida. I don't understand why he's still the starter there, except for the fact that they don't have anyone else.
Well, I mean, are you ready to go to DJ Langway? I mean, he was a very high-profile freshman, 5-star kid, number 1 out of Texas. I mean, I'd love to see him get more playing time, but if things go sideways, are you going to mess with the kid's headspace? I mean, quite frankly, I may want to play him to keep him in Gainesville. But man, I don't know.
That's a very, very good point that you bring up, because it's like, this is a very interesting situation, because what do? Do you leave him on the bench and piss him off and have him transfer out? Do you throw him on the field right away and kill his confidence because his team around him sucks? I mean, I don't know what you do there, but if you are a guy whose people are calling for his damn head right now in Billy Napier, don't you kind of have to play him?
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I look at it. I
look at that. Yeah.
I feel like you have to play him, or else, you're not going to be around to ever, you got him on the roster now, you recruited him, you brought him in. He's got to be better than Graham Mertz at some point. Why not go ahead and play him and get him some game experience before you start playing even tougher teams than the Canes, who, the guy on Yahoo Sports this morning told me they were going to win the ACC, get a first round bye in the playoff, and compete to be in the semifinal, was the words I heard on Yahoo Sports. And then I abruptly turned it off because that's garbage talk.
I mean, how many times are we going to see these blue bloods from the past? They so badly. I mean, how many times have we said Texas is back? Texas is back. And what do? They crap on themselves. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, until it happens, I don't buy it.
Yeah, no. Luckily, Texas did actually finally show up last year. And, I think we can say they are, semi-back, because they do have a quarterback, and it looks like they found a coach that can at least figure out what the hell to do with the talent that he has. But I'm not ready to crown the Canes just yet. It's not like this team has a steadfast home field advantage. No one even goes to their games, so It's not like they're going to just win every home game. No one cares in Miami, and no one goes to their games. So I'm not ready to crown them just yet. Another team who we were somewhat ready to crown based upon the acquisition of Dylan Gabriel, all the other transfer portal gets, the recruiting that Dan Lanning's been done, the coaching that Dan Lanning has showed us. We expected Oregon to come out and beat down Idaho. And I know the Vandals have shown flashes of being a competitive football program, but it's still Idaho. What happened yesterday? What do you think was the cause of Oregon struggling like they did?
I mean, honestly, this is a game where if you look at the box score, like just look at the stats, you just swore Oregon should have put up 70 points. I mean, 31 first downs, almost 500 yards total offense. They couldn't put the ball in the end zone when they needed to. I mean, I think their biggest problem right now is the rushing attack. 37 carries, only 107 yards, 2.9 per carry plus eight penalties. I mean, honestly, this was one of those games when Oregon screwed up, Idaho hit it, and Oregon's going to have to freaking make it happen when it counts. Otherwise, I mean, at one point, this is a 3-point game.
Yeah.
In the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter.
That's my whole point, is that late this game was still very, very close. And, that is what concerns me, is that, they struggled, and this was anyone's game going into the fourth quarter. Now, as you mentioned, Gabriel looked fine. There was nothing really wrong there. He was throwing the ball 49 times, though. That, to me, Dylan Gabriel's not a guy that really needs to throw the ball 49 times, is he? I mean,
you look at their running attack. I mean, you're running 37 times for 107 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, they were getting a lot of plays in. They just weren't able to run the ball at all.
No.
I mean, that's a serious problem for a team that's really, their offense identity is built on that line of scrimmage play.
Yeah, no, that concerned me. The fact that they couldn't run the ball for more than 2.9 per carry, and that they threw the ball 50 times. I mean, I don't think that's a recipe for success, throwing the ball 50 times. But they got the win. It's week 1. All that really matters is that you won the game. However, we have to take a look at what happened and evaluate your team based on the film that we have, which was this one game. So that's what we're going to do. Based upon that, we got to talk a little bit about the Fresno State Bulldogs going into the Big House yesterday. This was a close game as well going into the fourth quarter. I believe it was 23 to 10, and Fresno was about to score, and then they throw a 3-yard hitch pass that gets picked off and taken to the house. Why that was the play call, I have no idea. But what did you think about this game as a whole? What did you think about Fresno State's appearance showing up in Michigan yesterday?
I was a little worried about Fresno State after they lost Jeff Tedford, retired again. I mean, every time Tedford's gone somewhere, teams just end up winning. Three times at Fresno State. I mean, he just knows how to do it. Michigan just looked very pedestrian. Defensively, they looked fine, but offensively, they look really pedestrian, especially in their passing game. I mean, do you want your tight end to be your leading receiver with 8 receptions? I mean, that's a problem. And Donovan Edwards, I'm starting to wonder if there's something up with this guy, because you look at 2 years ago, he was really pretty good. Like, he and Corum were like 1A and 1B. Last year, Corum was definitely the 1, and Edwards was the 2. And it was even questionable if Edwards was really the 2 because their third string guy really played out well.
Well, he's the 3 now.
He's the 3 now. Yeah.
Mullins had 15 carries for 92 yards. Orji, the nice last name, was the second leading rusher with 5 carries for 32, and then Donovan Edwards finished the game with 11 carries for 27 yards. Let's talk about the first half for Donovan Edwards. He had 5 carries for 3 yards, and 2 catches for 0 yards. I can't explain this.
Yeah,
this guy ran all over everybody 2 years ago. Yeah. So I can't figure out what's happened in the last 2 seasons. What's going on with him? I don't get it.
I don't know if it's injuries or what, but I mean, he just looks like a shell of himself. I mean, the years when they lost to TCU in the playoff. I mean, he was a really good receiver running back, and now I don't know what he is. I mean, you can't blame the offensive line because that offensive line is still legit. Their defensive line is still legit. I don't know what to expect. And I think we'll realize really quick next week when Texas comes to town.
Yeah, those are the 2 games I think that I'm looking forward to most is Texas and Michigan, and then also Nebraska and Colorado. I'm going to keep a very close eye on those 2 games. Let's talk about some of these other games that we saw, top 25 teams just kind of roll yesterday. Let me know what stood out to you. Just going through them. Bama blew out Western Kentucky. Ohio State blew out Akron. Tennessee blew out FCS team UTC Chattanooga. Ole Miss got a blowout win as well. I think they put up 70 points. With Jackson Dart accounting for 6 touchdowns. Utah won big. Missouri won big. I guess my biggest takeaway from all that is Nico looked really good in his first regular season football game. Of course, everybody's ready to give him the Heisman Trophy. And I had several people around here yesterday tell me that he was the greatest quarterback in Tennessee history. I'm not sure about that yet. Let's let him play 2 games in the regular season before we start handing him trophies in New York. But I did like what I saw out of him. I was also impressed with the defense from Tennessee. Looked better than I expected, and the wide receivers stepped up. Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State.
Yes.
Was unreal. He does not look like a freshman, James.
No, he doesn't. Honestly, it was funny hearing the comparisons to him to Calvin Johnson. I would agree. I would agree. I think he's got a little better fast twitch.
Yeah.
I think Johnson's a little more physical in the air, but yeah, the comparisons are there. And another kid who I don't think people are talking about as much as Ryan Williams at Alabama. He reclassified for this year. He should be a senior. Man, that kid looks freaking scary. Like, this is the receiver that Nick Saban has wanted for the last couple of years, that Bryce Young is probably sitting there like, why the hell can I have a guy like this? I mean, this could change Alabama's trajectory significantly because that guy's a game breaker.
Yeah, I like what I saw out of Jalen Milroe too. We talked about Dylan Gabriel throwing the ball 50 times. Jalen Milroe threw the ball 9 times.
And he looked confident doing it. Like, yes. You could definitely see the Kalen DeBoer influence coming in on him. Alabama looked a lot more impressive in their first outing than I expected them to.
He looked really comfortable, and that's what we talked about in our preview show in the preseason was if Jalen Milroe and DeBoer can form that bond like he had with Michael Penix, look out. If he's got a guy, if he feels like he can count on Jalen Milroe to complete the plays and to, execute what he's drawing up, it could be really scary. And not only, did he throw the ball well and he averaged almost 23 yards of completion, he threw 3 touchdown passes. He also ran the ball 10 times for 80 yards and had 2 rushing scores. So Jalen Milroe had 5 touchdowns. And I know Western Kentucky's not as good as they have been, but Western Kentucky's had some decent football teams. And,
Yeah,
and
especially
has had-
offensively.
Offensively, yeah. And
Yeah.
to hold them to 0 points after losing the greatest coach of all time, I think we need to give a little credit to the Crimson Tide there. What about NC State is the one team that I want to ask you about before we get out of here today.
I got one after that too I want to talk about. So
Okay, yeah, we got about 6 minutes, so we'll do this quick. NC State struggled bad yesterday with Western Carolina. Do you think it's just week one? They had a little trouble getting going in week one, or are you concerned about NC State? What do you make of this?
I mean, you bring the quarterback. I think this is week one jitters. I mean, traditionally, you look at Dave Dorn's team, the line of scrimmage play has always been phenomenal. You're bringing in a whole new quarterback from Coastal Carolina. Honestly, I chalk it up to just first game jitters.
Okay.
The game, I got to say that nobody's really talking about, but should be, is Clark Lee and the Commodores knocking off Virginia Tech at home. Smart move by Clark Lee, scrapping that offense and bringing in over Jarek Hill as his assistant head coach and implementing the offense they ran at New Mexico State, a program that never wins. And they win off the gates and knock off a Virginia Tech team that should do pretty well in the ACC. I mean, what are your thoughts? I think Danny Pavia is he once again played his game, and Vanderbilt's moving the ball on offense. It's impressive to watch.
No, I do think I was very impressed with Vanderbilt. I was impressed with the way they ran the ball. And the main thing I was impressed with Vanderbilt overall was their physicality. They went toe-to-toe with the Hokies all day long at the line of scrimmage. They were able to run the football. They were able to, to throw the ball when they needed to. Their defense was able to get stops. It just didn't look like a Vanderbilt football team to me there, which is a good thing. I was very impressed with that. And I think we need to give Coach Lee a little bit of credit. We were talking about that he might be able to make some changes. We didn't think he was going to compete in the SEC or anything, but we thought he might be able to do some things that would improve the quality of play down in Nashville. And based on what I saw yesterday, I will give him credit in the fact that he did that. My biggest concern was not so much, what Vanderbilt did. My biggest concern is Virginia Tech. Are we ever going to see Virginia Tech back to where they once were? This was a team that used to compete for conference titles. They used to compete, in the top 25 every season under Frank Beamer. And since he's left, it just hasn't been there. It just has not been there. And, I think yesterday was more of a testament to that I don't know if we're going to see, Virginia Tech ever get back to where they once were.
I mean, it's the consistency aspect that was so impressive with Beamer. I mean, year to year, quarterback was a little different because you've had some traditional drop back quarterbacks with the Drunken Millers, and then you've had some basically scat quarterbacks like Michael Vick, both first round draft choices. But special teams, they were always outstanding. They always were good off the edge, great defensively. And the running game, the running backs were always hard hitting. They always had that good line of scrimmage play. And right now, you just don't see it. They just don't have that same identity since Frank Beamer's left that program.
Yeah, I mean, Frank Beamer was there for 29 years.
Yeah.
And he took the program to 23 consecutive bowl games from 1993 to 2015 before retiring. And since then, it's just been dog crap. Pretty much there at Virginia Tech. I mean, they never got the best recruits, James. It wasn't like Virginia Tech was pulling in 5 stars when Frank Beamer was there. I mean, they got Michael Vick. They had a couple sprinkled in.
Brian Stith, yeah.
But really, their deal was, defense, special teams, and execution on offense, mainly running the football. And that just, we haven't seen that since.
No, not at all.
280, 143, and 4 in 35 years, including 238, 121, and 2 at Virginia Tech. And when he retired, Frank Beamer was the winningest active coach in college football. And it's hard to replace a legend. It's even harder to replace someone who's done that at a school that's not necessarily a blue blood power. And it's like they've gone back to where they were before Frank Beamer, in my estimation.
I
don't see him getting out.
I know people are probably questioning why we're bringing up Vandy, but let's be honest. Vandy doesn't have the staple that other SEC teams do. I mean, hell, them making a bowl game is like them winning the SEC. It's that hard for them. They are at such a disadvantage. I mean, if they had the recruiting background that Florida does right now, yeah, that they could win 8, 9, 10 games every year. But they can't get those kind of kids to freaking Nashville.
No. And their commitment to the run yesterday, even when their lead evaporated and all of a sudden they were losing, they still continued to run the football. They ran the football 48 times yesterday, for 181 yards. And that was including, a negative 6 play. So I really give Coach Lee credit for his vision, his game plan, and his commitment to run the football and being physical at a school that is not known for their physicality, James.
I honestly, if they can win their non-conference games, they're going to go to a bowl game.
I concur. Speaking of which, looking forward next week, I said Nebraska, Colorado was a game that I was looking forward to. What other games are you looking at? Obviously, we said Michigan, Texas. Anything else that I'm missing for next week?
Oh, God, that Michigan-Texas game is just going to be so big. I mean, it's just going to be identity of who is which team, which is weird. We're having this conversation now, the second week in the season. But, I mean, how many times have we been burned by Texas? And I look at that one. That one really just hits home pretty hard for me. What about you?
Yeah, that's the biggest game, I think, and I just want to see Nebraska versus Colorado, because I want to see what Raiola looks like, against another team that can put points up. And we've talked. Nebraska is another team that we talk about every year, like Miami and Texas and Notre Dame. Are they back? These old 1980s and 1990s, all the semi-gray hair people that remember when these teams were good. That's what I'm interested to see is, are they back? Are they really good? Can Nebraska compete in the Big Ten? Because since they've gotten there, it's been a freaking disaster. But I would say if there's
a backup game, Tennessee at NC State.
Yeah. And
I mean, that would probably be the next one, or hell, Boise State at Oregon. I mean, that Jaunty throwing up 6 touchdowns yesterday in Statesboro was unreal.
Yeah, I believe the game is in Charlotte, is it not?
You're right. Yes.
The Tennessee NC State game. I think it's on a neutral site.
It's that Duke's Mayo game. Yes, you're right.
Yeah,
it's at Bank of America.
Okay, that's what I thought. So, but still, I agree with you. I think that is a game to watch. I think that is that'll give us a real test as to what Nico looks like. In a true. I mean, Iowa didn't look good in that bowl game to me.
Well, they had so many guys out.
They had so many guys missing.
Yeah,
they just had so many guys that weren't playing, and it just didn't look like a true test. And then yesterday, you're playing a FCS team, so I wasn't really blown away by that. But I was impressed with Dante Thornton. Junior stepped up big. Chris Brazell, the transfer from Tulane, and then also Brew McCoy coming back from injury and getting 6 catches for 89 yards. That's what they need. That's what Joe Milton didn't have last year.
Yeah.
Was these wide receivers on the outside that could beat their guy, get open, and catch the damn football. And that's what Nico had yesterday. Now, he was throwing darts, so that helped. But having guys that can get open and catch the ball is very important.
I mean, outside of Squirrel White last year, really, what did they have at receiver?
Not much, and he wasn't that great. And he wasn't that great.
Yeah.
At times. And yesterday, he only had 2 catches for 22 yards. So they needed these transfers. Thornton, the transfer. I believe he was from Oregon. They needed
Yep.
him to step up. He did. That was huge. And, Brew McCoy was playing really well last year until he got injured. So I give a lot of credit to Brew. Johnny likes Brew, I think. And I do too. I think he's a good player. He was really, really making plays for Tennessee last year before the injury. So I think he's going to be huge. So that's it. Week 1's in the books. We're going to see what happens in week 2. I hope everybody comes back next week. We've got a huge guest. We've got Maurice Hall, the former running back for Ohio State, is going to join us and help break down some of these Big Ten games and some of these Big Ten teams. And then we're also obviously going to go hard on the Michigan and Texas game, and then also Nebraska versus Colorado. So everybody tune back in and check us out next week, same time, same bat channel. Want to thank National Streaming Sports Network, our umbrella streaming network that gives us what we need to get our program out there, and then also BetUs.com, the trusted name in sports betting. James, keep your chin up. I'll talk to you again real soon. Okay, buddy?
Hey, we'll see you.
All right, bud.